travel ban will be cannon fodder to the recruiters. It's the worst thing we could do. But we do need to do, and we do, extraordinary screening, but a great deal more effort has to go into the building of community, the reaching out and working with these entities, with these sectors of society, so that there is not as significant a gap as there is in many parts of the world, by the way, not just in Britain.
We are back with breaking news coverage of the deadly terrorist attack in London, which left 7 dead and 48 injured. That was former Secretary of State John Kerry this morning offering his condolences and what he thinks the focus should be in the fight against terrorism. Dean Obeidallah is back with me, and joining me now, former State Department spokesperson Nayyera Haque, former CIA Special Agent Jack Rice, and former Pentagon official Rosa Brooks. And so let's just go around and talk to each of you. Nayyera, I'll start with you. We just heard from John Kerry talking about what works and what doesn't work. Let's also have John Kerry, one more clip of him, and he was also on Meet the Press speaking about Muslims in the United Kingdom. Take a listen.
They've had a long-standing problem with respect to greater levels of alienation, a harder time assimilating into the broader British society, a lack of similar opportunity. So there are a lot of ingredients, and I'm going to leave it to her and to them to sort that out, particularly 5 days before an election.
And Nayyera, by her, he meant Theresa May, who is the prime minister, who is looking to be reelected. Chris Dickey earlier, in an earlier hour, was saying that part of the challenge for Ms. May is that she was the Home Secretary prior to being prime minister, meaning she was in charge of law and order and security. So a lot of this sort of lands at her doorstep. How do you suppose that these 3 successive attacks might impact the response of the British government, and could it impact that election?
Well, there's certainly the political response, and that is the maintaining elections, maintaining law and order. As you see, that there have been calls potentially to suspend the elections in London, and I'm glad to see that Theresa May has come out strongly that these democratic institutions need to continue, particularly at a time in which terrorists are trying to undermine democracy with their actions. That's the political side of this. There's also the social side, in which she mentioned the intolerance for extremism, that has become a challenge in British communities, particularly in the ghettoization of immigrant Muslims, because there's a Labour Party vote that they've been able to access by having, go-to-ing imam who will then turn out thousands of voters for them. But within that, you've also found Saudi influence of it's a very extremist interpretation of Islam. It has been allowed to invade the thinking of other Muslim communities, and that's going to be a challenge, particularly for the United States, as Donald Trump just cut a $1 billion arms deal with the Saudi Arabia government. I mean, the Saudis have been, their ideology has been a challenge for Muslims around the world, and it doesn't seem that President Trump has been able to square the circle on that.
Yeah, Jack Rice, it does seem conspicuous that Donald Trump made great friends with the Saudis, mentioned nothing about Wahhabism, the extremist ideology that Osama bin Laden practiced, and that they have, a lot of people believe, exported around the world. He didn't have much to say about that.
No, you're absolutely right. The problem is ISIS has never been an existential threat. The only thing that gives them power is when the United States and the West goes after them and does things that are anti-Muslim, anti-Middle East, anti-race, all of the other issues that we've seen. It's the overreaction of the West that we have constantly seen. And you know what? There's another piece of this. The other side of the problem is the United States historically, not just with this president, but previously, we love supporting totalitarian dictators. Hence, a $110 billion deal with the Saudis, what we did with Mubarak in Egypt, what we did in Pakistan, what we've done in other parts of the world. We love to have strong men who stomp down on their own people. That's all well and good from a stability standpoint for about 10 minutes, but the reaction, the impact over time is what we're seeing now. You're going to see those people push back. They push back against their own, but they push back against the West, and they push back against the United States because they know it's the United States who put them in power. It's the United States that's overthrown democratically supported governments in those regions, and we've put our own people in. So I think under those circumstances, it's frankly not a shock that some people are very angry. We need to recalibrate who we are, what we're doing, and remember what we stand for, not just use it as a bumper sticker.
Yeah, and of course, our closest ally, including in invading Iraq, was, of course, Great Britain, and they are feeling still, I think, a lot of the backlash from that. Rosa, I want to play you Mark Warner. He was the Democratic senator from Virginia. He was on CNN this morning talking about one of those reactions that you've seen, and that is the reassertion by the Trump administration that there should be a travel ban, and also Britain's reactions. Let's listen to Mark Warner.
There is no specific threat against the United States, but obviously we've seen our strongest ally, Britain, now hit 3 times. Our hearts and thoughts and prayers go out to them. But I think what you're seeing in Britain is a resoluteness, but also a recognition that as the British, who went through 3 decades of IRA-related terrorism, they will carry on. And I think in many ways that's what we need to do here in our country as well.
You know, Rosa, what strikes me about that is that sounds the way that American presidents used to sound, but that is not the way Donald Trump responded to these attacks in London.
That's absolutely right. Donald Trump seems to be, if Donald Trump's goal was to increase the threat of terrorism to the United States, he couldn't be doing a better job. I think that between the inflammatory rhetoric.
I'm sorry, Rosa, I have to break in, and we're going to come back to you in just a second, but we want to go now to London, where authorities are giving an update on the investigation into last night's terrorist attack.
But there, of course, remains much more to do. We are making significant progress now in identifying the 3 attackers and confirming the fact that there were no other suspects at the scene when the attack was carried out. Work is ongoing to understand more about them, about their connections, and about whether they were assisted or supported by anyone else. As I think you're aware, there are searches ongoing in East London, and 12 arrests have already been made. There is clearly more to do, and we will work relentlessly to get to the facts. We have established that the van used during the attack was a white Renault van that was recently hired by one of the attackers. As our understanding grows, we now understand that the van at London Bridge started the attack at 21:58 hours yesterday as it went from north to south on the river, with members of the public calling police a few minutes later. The van mounted the pavement and collided with pedestrians before being abandoned, where attackers were armed with knives, continued into the Borough Market area, stabbing numerous people. The attackers were then confronted by the firearms officers, and I can confirm that 8 police firearms officers discharged their weapons. Whilst this will be subject to an investigation by the IPCC, our initial assessment is in the region of 50 rounds, in the region of 50 bullets were fired by those 8 officers. The 3 attackers were shot dead. The situation these officers were confronted with was critical. A matter of life and death. 3 armed men wearing what appeared to be suicide belts. They had already attacked and killed members of the public and had to be stopped immediately. Indeed, I'm not surprised that when faced with what they must have feared were 3 suicide bombers, the firearms officers fired an unprecedented number of rounds to be completely confident that they had neutralised the threat that those men posed. I am humbled by the bravery of an officer who will rush towards a potential suicide bomber thinking only of protecting others. As the officers confronted the terrorist, a member of the public also suffered a gunshot wound. Although the injuries are not critical in nature, they are in hospital receiving medical attention, and we will of course keep you updated on that. 7 people have been killed in addition to the 3 attackers. Work to inform the next of kin of the victims is ongoing, and this may take some time as we believe some of the victims are from abroad. On top of that, we have 36 people remaining in hospital suffering from a range of injuries. Some of these are extremely serious, and 21 remain in critical condition. You will have heard today about the British Transport Police officer who sustained injuries in the attack, responding to the incident. I can also confirm that an off-duty Metropolitan Police officer based on Southwark Borough was caught up in the attack. Fortunately, he has not suffered life-threatening injuries. He remains in hospital. The investigation team are taking statements from hundreds of witnesses, and I again appeal to anybody with information or footage on the incident to make contact with the police. The cordons in place around London Bridge and around Borough Market area will remain in place for a little while yet, and we'd encourage the public to avoid the area whilst our investigation continues. This is likely to have some impact on travel arrangements in the first part of tomorrow morning, and we'd ask everyone to check with their travel operators and seek alternate routes where necessary. Now, the public can expect to see additional police, both armed and unarmed, across the capital over forthcoming days, and our security plans and policing plans for forthcoming events are being reviewed. You will also see increased physical measures in order to keep the public safe on London's bridges. Finally, I ask the public to remain calm but vigilant, and if you see anything suspicious, no matter how insignificant you think it might be, please don't hesitate to contact the police, either on 999 or the anti-terrorism hotline 0800 789 321. I'll take a couple of questions.
Do you think all the main perpetrators were shot dead by your officers?
We're increasingly confident that this attack was...
That's Mark Rowley. He's the Assistant Commissioner for the Metropolitan Police, giving a news conference updating the situation in London. 7 dead, 48 injured. We now know 21 people in hospital in critical condition. Assistant Commissioner Rowley noting that cordons will remain in place around London Bridge and the Borough Market where those attacks took place, and warning Britons to not be alarmed by and to expect to see additional police around town. We know that, of course, there will be a concert in Manchester later on this afternoon, 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That is going forward. Security preparations taking place for that as well. But London certainly on high alert, but certainly a calm and measured response to what we're seeing in London. We will keep monitoring that news, or if there's anything else additional that's newsworthy, we will bring it to you. My panel's still here. Nayyirah Haq, Dean Obeidallah, Jack Rice, and Rosa Brooks. And Rosa, I interrupted you in mid-sentence, so I'm going to allow you to finish your thought about Donald Trump and whether or not his response is helpful and fruitful as a counterterrorism matter.
I can finish that thought quickly. No, it is not helpful or fruitful. And I actually wanted to draw a connection to something that you were talking about in the first hour of your show, Joy. You know, Trump's rhetoric about the travel ban, which seems to be the only thing he's able to talk about or wants to talk about, and his fixation on the idea that we need the travel ban to protect us. You know, obviously, I actually think that bans like that make things worse because it sends a pretty clear message to angry, distressed people around the world that the U.S. doesn't care about you, doesn't care about your problems, we're your enemy. But the interesting thing, you were talking earlier about the U.S. withdrawal from the Paris Accords, about the threat of climate change. Ironically, if we think that the biggest threat of terrorism to the United States is angry, disaffected, miserable people in other parts of the world, climate change is going to make that a million times worse. I mean, some studies suggest that by the end of this century, most cities in the Middle East will literally be uninhabitable because they will be too hot for humans to live in them. You know, climate change is going to fuel unbelievable refugee flows, conflicts, and so on that are going to make the Syrian refugee crisis look like small potatoes. Yep. If we care about reducing the longer-term threat of conflict and terrorism, we should be doing our best to reduce the impact of climate change, not fixating on pulling out of the Paris Accord, having travel bans and all that kind of stuff. It's the exact wrong thing to do.
It's an excellent point, Dean. I mean, the Syrian refugee flows as a result of what's happening in Syria is part of what's fueling the tension in Europe. And Rosa makes an excellent point. Climate change will make that worse.
Certainly. And there was 2015, the Department of Defense had a study that came out about national security interests involved with the Paris Accord. So it's a stunning, it's all interrelated.
That's why the Secretary of Defense and the Secretary of State, Rex Tillerson, who came from Exxon, all were for staying in the Paris Accords. Interestingly enough, Dean Obeidallah and Rosa Brooks will be back. Nayyirah Haq and Jack Rice, thank you guys very much. And coming up, dear leaderism in the GOP, the love fest between Donald Trump and his covfefe of friends. Stay with us.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.